really won the hearts of New York, like the Knicks.
The Knicks in those days were the talk of the town. I mean, everybody loved them. They weren't superstars, but together, they blended beautifully.
They loved Clyde, they loved Bradley, they loved DeBusschere, they loved Dick Barnett, they loved the captain, Willis Reed.
Well, I remember walking down 33rd Street with him, you know, with the gun and everybody. Hey, Willis. You knew you were with somebody.
Willis Reed's teammates and Knicks fans loved him. Opponents and their fans respected him. In 1970, all watched as Reed dominated, winning MVP of the All-Star Game in the regular season with his physical and spirited play.
He played position defense, physical position defense, knowing how to block out, keep his body between the man and the ball in the basket.
And he was closer to 6'8", but he got good position, he was strong. And of course, like all good players, he had a feel for the game. And he knew where the ball was going to go. He got it. And once he got his mitts on it, he could never take it away from him.
To Baylor. And Willis Reed.
Opponents felt Reed's presence on the court. His teammates, they felt that presence and more. Willis Reed was their captain, a title he didn't take lightly.
I always was concerned about the other guys because you need to go and set an example.
Every rookie in all of the 10 years that he played would be his roommate.
Well, one of my favorite roommates, obviously, was Johnny Warren.
You know, going from college to the NBA, it's a big transition. Willis was the kind of guy who sort of, yeah, you can play, Rook. You know, you can play with us. It was almost like, you know, that father image. We felt we could play with anybody because of Willis. Willis has to go up against Chamberlain. You know, he has to go up against Ansel. He has to go up against Kareem.
He was the captain. He was the ultimate big man. He came to your defense if you ever needed it.
By the way, he could fight. I remember one night they were playing L.A., and they were belting around. He put 3 guys down. If they were in 4, he would have put the 4th guy down. So don't mess with him.
I remember one night, it was about 10 o'clock at night, and Willis says, well, Rook, I got to go to bed. I got to see the big guy tomorrow. The big guy meaning Chamberlain.
My first time ever playing Wilton, I actually scored 32 points against him. I was pretty proud of myself. And then I looked down at his stats, and I held him to 56, you know. So, I mean, I knew he was a load. I knew he was a real load.
Nobody was going to stop Wilt. You simply needed to neutralize Wilt. And Willis did that with offense, quickness, and dogged defense.
Wilt Chamberlain was Goliath, but Willis Reed was no David hoping to get lucky. They battled toe-to-toe many times, none tougher than in the 1970 finals, when the Knicks, seeking their first title, faced Chamberlain and the Lakers.
Willis's job was obviously to contain Chamberlain as well as he could, and he did to a certain extent. Chamberlain went crazy a couple of games, and that's why it was tied 2-2.
Game 5. Willis is the most valuable player of the team, and in the second quarter, he makes a move to the basket, falls to the floor, crashing to the floor.
And Willis is hurt as the Lakers come up with the ball. He's still in the backcourt.
When I went down, I thought I was really hurt.
Willis very slow to get up.
You're thinking, uh-oh. Uh-oh, you don't know how severe it is, but you're saying, oh, no.
Nick traded Danny well and comes out to take a look.
They haul him off the floor. Our star is gone. What are we going to do now?
That was a major, major blow to the team. But, you know, we never lost confidence.
Picked up by Chamberlain in the corner, outside Bradley, one-hander from 20, yes!
Even though Willis was hurt, he was still there.
We're tied at 87.
And we went out against Chamberlain, Baylor, and West and beat the Lakers in the 5th game.
They will remember this no matter what happens as the night that Reed sat out most of the way and the Knicks came back.
That's probably was the most significant game in that series. Winning game 5 gave us that home court advantage.
From the bowels of Madison Square Garden, the captain inspired his teammates. But how far would that inspiration carry them? And the Knicks still desperately needed one more win.
The attention immediately went to, how is Willis? Is Willis going to be able to play in the next game, which would be Game 6 in L.A.? Family is most important to Willis. So when the Knicks are getting ready to win a championship, Willis tried to make everybody a family.
After the injury, all eyes were on Willis. What do you hear about Willis? How's he walking? Is he going to play? You know, the whole thing. We were monitoring him almost by the minute.
He was like walking around the room, you know, and he jumps. He said, "Hey, Rook, I feel pretty good, Rook." He reached and he touched the ceiling, and he came back down, and he put weight on that leg, and he just fell on the bed. So I said, "No, Cap, you can't go tonight. You can't go tonight. Won't you rest up?" And he didn't play.
Willis Reed is out.
That drive, that desire, that will to win came from Willis's childhood.
I was born actually on my grandfather's farm in a little town called Hico, H-I-C-O, Louisiana.
When he was very young, they moved to the big town of Bernice, and he once told me Hico had no stoplights. Bernice had 2 stoplights in town. I learned hard work. I mean, because both my parents worked, so I worked. My mom was a very good cotton picker. She could pick up to 300 pounds. I think the most I ever picked was like 210 pounds.
Willis said, you know, the weather sometimes, the temperature got up to 120 degrees. But I made up my mind when I picked that cotton that I was going to be the best cotton picker there ever was in the history of cotton picking. I went from 8th grade being 6'2" and growing 3 inches, and by September, and I went back to school 6'5", 13 years old, wearing a size 13 shoe. So I needed to work to make some extra money because my clothes became very expensive. I actually worked on the same job with my dad, making 75 cents an hour. And I remember after the summer was over, my dad said, well, you know, I know you're thinking about going to college, but I mean, you don't want to go to college. You can stay here and work with Mr. Lindsay. I told Dad, I said, I'm going to college. Because of his height, obviously, he gravitated to basketball. I was clumsy. I mean, I used to walk down the street and just fall down. I mean, you know, you couldn't control your body.
Where many might get discouraged and quit, Willis Reed became determined, a trait his mother instilled in him.
My mom is always excited. Well, who won? We lost. I go, well, who won? We lost. She said, I should have known it before I even asked. I mean, that was like really a shock. I said, you know, I'm going to prove to my mom I'm going to get to be a better basketball player, and we're going to win some games.
Eventually, Reed was noticed by such college powerhouses as Nebraska, Loyola Chicago, and Wisconsin. But instead, he decided to stay close to home and attend Grambling State.
I liked the way Grambling played. Grambling played running basketball. They're big men, blocked shots, they ran, they dunked the basketball. No, I had a good career. I think, you know, I think we lost 17, 18, 19 games in my whole 4 years at Grambling. So, I mean, we were a very good basketball team.
Reed had started to make a name for himself and was considered a top pick in the 1964 draft.
The Knicks drafted him, but on the 2nd round, which was a surprise.
I mean, I'm mad. I'm upset. I'm really upset that I didn't get drafted first round. I thought I was good enough to get first round pick.
Yeah, we didn't have a good book on him, but they soon found out.
So I came with a chip on my shoulder. You get up for every day, you have something to prove to everybody.
And he gave New York a shot in the arm.
With that chip on his shoulder, Reed went on to average close to 20 points and 14 rebounds per game, winning Rookie of the Year. He was part of the Knicks family now, and he gave everything. Game in and game out all the way up through the 1970 finals.
Family is most important to Willis. So therefore, when the Knicks are getting ready to win a championship, the family aspect just went from Bernice, Louisiana to Madison Square Garden, where Willis, as captain of the Knicks, tried to make everybody a family.
Reed was not with his family in Game 6 of the 1970 finals, and an unchecked Wilt Chamberlain took control in a convincing victory to force a Game 7. It was now winner take all at Madison Square Garden. Captain or no captain.
Didn't look good, man. The guy could barely walk.
The big question is, will Willis Reed play tonight?
I saw Willis getting a needle about this size.
Here comes Willis, and the crowd is going wild.
Here I am trying to play the greatest offensive player to ever play a center in the NBA on one leg. You know, it's a heck of a predicament to be in.
May 8th, 1970. All day, it seemed like there was only one question on every New Yorker's mind. Would the captain, their captain, Willis Reed, play that night?
I went to the Garden early that day. One point in the afternoon, I went out on the floor and shot the basketball, but I could realize that the thing I could do, I could drag the leg, but I couldn't pick the leg up. I made up my mind then, I thought I was going to try.
The question is, will Willis Reed play tonight? There is tremendous doubt right now.
When Willis came into the office prior to Game 7, he had 2 sneakers from Game 5. He took the sneakers and threw them in the garbage can, and he said, these sneakers were of no help to me in that last game.
The Lakers continue their warm-ups 2 hour right. The Knickerbockers warming up 2 hour left.
We had no idea, man, that he would play or not.
And the crowd is very quiet as they wonder whether Willis will be in the lineup.
I kept going back into the locker room to see if Willis really was going to play. Each time I went back onto the court, Wilt Chamberlain was coming over and saying, is Willis going to play? And I said, well, I don't know if Willis is going to play.
Both the Knicks and Lakers looking over toward the entranceway from the Knicks dressing room.
I saw Willis getting a needle about this size, at which point I knew definitely he was going to play.
Here comes Willis, and the crowd is going wild.
I walk out on the court, you know, I'm coming through the tunnel, and I get a standing ovation from the fans, and I'm thinking, you know, this is a heck of a predicament to be in.
And to come out there in that crowd, you know, wounded, as they say, wounded, but he wasn't dead.
Right, the Lakers have stopped, and they're just watching Willis go through his warm-ups.
When he comes out and this big roar goes up, you know, and we're looking around too, like the Lakers, like, what is going on? And we see Willis come out.
When I went out on the court, I needed to make sure I did not show any sign of weakness.
I think I saw watery eyes in every member of that team.
The electricity was unbelievable. It's like, we could win this game.
It was electric. You could just feel it.
Yeah, it was a special moment in sports. This was something.
Chamberlain gets control. Willis Reed did not try.
Here I am trying to play the greatest offensive player to ever play center in the NBA. Wilt Chamberlain on one leg. This is not going to work. You know? But, you know, you got to try. I just couldn't flex the leg. I had to run and drag the leg. If I did that, I was okay.
Court to Frazier. Got it by West. Left side of the lane. Outside Reed. Jumps from 20. Yes!
Takes his first shot and makes it.
Barnett to Reed on the forecourt. From 20. Jumps. Yes! Willis has hit on his first 2.
Willis put his whole career on the line for the team. The most inspired was Walt Frazier.
Garrett loses to Frazier.
One thing that is often overlooked is that Clyde Frazier had the game of his life. I mean, he was the star of that game.
We weren't running on the floor. We were like running on air. They were so buoyant after that, you know, like, yeah, man, this is it.
Part of us did not want to let Willis Reed down.
Out on its feet rolling. Frazier, top of the key. Outside the Busher. In the corner, Frazier. He drives to Barnett for a jump. Yes! The Knicks are hugging each other on the bench. That is it! The New York Knickerbockers have won the 1969-70 World Championship of Basketball. They are being mobbed as they head to the dressing room. The New York Knicks are the world champions in a devastating run.
I still get inspiration now when I think about it. It's very moving for me.
That was for everybody. I mean, this was something that we all wanted.
May 8th, 1970 was the day when Willis Reed went from all-star to legend.
He wins Most Valuable Player of the season, Most Valuable Player of the All-Star game, Most Valuable Player of the Championship Series. It all came together for him in that year, and that's why he became, I think, one of the 10 greatest stars in the history of New York sports.
On behalf of the New York Knicks, we've all missed you. We've never been the same since you left.
To me, this is the most important award I ever had.
If I say to you, the Willis Reed game, you'll know exactly what I mean.
It looked like it was a script. Okay, you come out late, you know, and we'll give you the first 2 shots, and we'll win a championship. You know, that'll be it, you know.
It has become mythical. The Garden only holds 20,000 people. You probably had 500,000 saying that they were at that game that night.
Willis Reed led the Knicks to a second title in 1973, and again was named MVP of the finals. But little did he know that this would be his last full season.
We were out playing the Lakers, and I was running down the floor, and I felt something snap in my right knee, and that was the beginning of the end of my career. And in the spring, we made the playoffs, and I couldn't do it, and the doctor said, "You're going to have surgery again." And I just said, there's no reason for you to go out and abuse your body any more than you've already done. And that was it.
I think Willis loved the game so much. And it's always very difficult when you're giving your whole life to something to stop it. But he did try to give the best he can with the limited amount of movement he could have.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to pay tribute to a man whose type comes our way only once in a lifetime.
Willis Reed retired in 1974 and became the first Knick to have his number hang from the rafters.
On behalf of the New York Knicks, management, and the players, we present to you this plaque. It's a great honor. Personally, I'm sure I can speak for you and my other teammates that played with you and say that we've all missed you. We've never been the same since you left.
To be able to walk in Madison Square Garden for the rest of your life and see number 19 there with 22 and with 10 and all the other numbers, it's a great thing. I said that night, to me, this is the most important award I ever had.
In 1977, the Knicks gave their former captain a new leadership role as head coach. He led them to the playoffs, but just 14 games into his second season, management wanted a change, and Willis Reed was fired.
I thought I did a good job, but that's life. You move on. It broke my heart, but because I thought that we were on the right track.
To his credit, and I think this tells a lot about the man, when he got fired by the Knicks and he still wanted to have a career as a coach, he went to St. John's and became an assistant coach to Lou Carnesecca.
Comes out and becomes a volunteer coach, because as a volunteer coach, we couldn't even pay his coffee. He would come every day to practice, work with our fellas for zero. That's why people love him so much. He didn't have to wear a big hat. He knew how to wear that.
Over the years, Reed's love of the game kept him in basketball, either on the sidelines coaching or in the front office. But it's his indomitable will and spirit that puts Willis Reed alongside the greats in the annals of NBA history.
I'm an observer of life. I'm an observer of the great players who played before me. And to know that you were one of them, and you were at one point one of the best in the league, an all-star, a champion, you know, is something that, you know, you'll always be there.
I remember looking at the photograph that I took of Willis Reed walking on the court. David Stern was with me, and he looked at the picture and he said that was the most dramatic moment in playoff history.
Willis set the tone on the team. He played the role of captain.
And he exemplifies courage, team spirit, love for the game, and love for your team.
You know, a lot of guys play good, but do you respect them? So we had a supreme respect for Willis. That's what it was. He was that type of guy.
I think if you never played it, if you never bounced the ball, he'd still be the great person he is. The guy you want to be with. You want to be with Willis.
One of the league's magnificent clutch performance, Walt Clyde Frazier.
This Clyde basketball, he let us play with it.
Oh, he went in hard that time with the finesse.
One-on-one, he could score against anybody.
The New York Knickerbockers have won the World Championship of Basketball.
They talk about the Willis Reed game. It really should be the Clyde Frazier game.
It was all about doing whatever was needed to do to win a championship, and every step of the way, he did it with style.
Isolating and devastating, invincible, indefensible.
Walt Frazier, who's Walt Frazier? Oh, Clyde. Nobody calls him Walt. You know, everybody calls him Clyde.
Walt and Clyde are just totally different people. You know, the hat, you know, the Rolls Royce and all that, that was Clyde. It was almost like Walt was sort of in the background and letting Clyde sort of take the stage.
New York had to have Clyde. Clyde had to have New York. No place else. I mean, he has to be in New York.
It was fabulous. New York was free-spirited, and I hit all the East Side spots, and then I end up eventually uptown in Harlem because they didn't start partying until like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. So then you could go to like 4 a.m. up there.
In the city that never sleeps, Clyde Frazier was born. Known as Walt in his Knick uniform, it was his unique dress in the social arena of New York City that created a whole new identity.
The fur coat, big platform shoes, the big afro, the hats.
Back in those days, everyone dressed up. We used to always compete to see who could outdress each other, all the players on the team.
There is a photograph of him with a black hat, like a black cape, and like gold chain. And to me, it was totally Rembrandt.
There's one time we were in Baltimore, and I see this hat, a Borsalina. It had a wide brim. First time I wore the hat, everybody laughed at me. And I just said, hey, man, I look good in this hat. I'm going to keep it on.
Walt came in with a wide brim hat, and I think the picture of Bonnie and Clyde had been out.
Danny Whalen, the leprechaun of a trainer that they had a great sense of humor and noticed it and said, who does he think he is, Clyde Barrow? And it stuck.
Sporting funky threads and a hip nickname, Frazier always stood out in a crowd, but never wilted under the bright lights of New York City.
He had that connection with people that they feel they can approach him.
I want to be around people. I never isolate myself. When I go in a bar, I'm going to the bar. I'm not going in the back. You know, I'm going to buy people drinks. I'm going to drink with them. I like to mingle with the fans. I like to have a good time.
Away from the court, he was Clyde. Once he got to Madison Square Garden, he became more like Superman.
Walt could do pretty much what he wanted to do on the basketball floor.
Whatever needed to be done. If he needed to come up with a key steal, he did that. He was a good rebounding guard. He could shoot from the perimeter. He could take it to the basket.
I was the maestro, the orchestrator. I was the guy that got everybody involved.
He said everyone has a certain rhythm that he dribbles to.
If you look at it most of the time on the court, he walks slow.
I'm going to do it at my own pace, but it's going to get done.
But then sometimes you just turn it on.
He just has this certain way about him. Everything just seems to come easy for him.
He was the greatest athlete I ever played. One-on-one, he could score against anybody.
And the game was on the line. That's when he would make that big steal.
West across the midcourt, unlooses to Frazier. Drives ahead of the field, down the lane, layup is good.
He could take it from you anytime he wanted to, but he waited till it meant something to the team. He's just a great player.
When you look at me, we could be up by 10 or we could be down by 10. I don't give you any inclination of what's happening. But on the inside, I'm percolating like everybody else, but my demeanor on the outside is one of cool.
I mean, one thing is Clyde never had a technical foul called against him, as far as I know.
It was a culmination of all of these things that once I got to New York in Madison Square Garden and key moments where people say, man, this guy is cool.
Walt never wanted to embarrass his family or his team on the court.
So I was kind of groomed to being in Madison Square Garden with the game on the line because I've been doing this since I was in grade school. I'm the oldest of 9 kids, so I was a role model long before I knew what the word meant.
Clyde grew up in Atlanta. He came from a very conservative kind of family.
Unequivocally, I developed leadership. My parents would always say when they weren't around, Walt, you're in charge, so I had to take care of my sisters.
Being the oldest of 9, especially with 7 sisters, he had to walk his sisters to school every day, had to wait for them to use the bathroom and everything like that.
He had to do the ironing. He probably had to do some diapering. And he took it all in. And this is what life is all about. I've got to grin and bear it.
You know, Walt said he learned how to be patient.
I have the patience of Job, I always say, and actually a lot of guys would make fun of me, but as I got older, that worked in my favor because my sisters had a lot of girlfriends, so there were always girls around the house.
Patience and leadership were learned at home, but it was on the basketball court where he learned to control his emotions.
I was not always so cool. I remember one time I was having a poor game and threw the ball away, and I was yelling at the refs, and my coach came up to me, hey, Frazier, don't lose your head, son. Your brains are in it. You know, that was a statement that I've never forgotten.
Because of that, he really became the leader on the court. Never wanted to embarrass his family or his team on the court.
So I was kind of groomed to being in Madison Square Garden with the game on the line, 19,000 people going berserk because I've been doing this since I was in grade school.
He was really told by his mother, you know, without a game plan, you're nothing, so you always have to plan for success.
I was a catcher in baseball. I was a quarterback in football. I was a guard in basketball. So I said, well, my best chance is in basketball, so that's why I chose basketball.
He wanted to go to black school down south, but his mother said to him, look, Southern Illinois is really basically the only integrated school that's offering you a scholarship. You should go there because you'll, you know, learn to deal with different people, and you'll get out of the South and learn about other parts of the country.
I was petrified, man. 25,000 students, mostly from Chicago, New York, St. Louis. I was so far behind, man. I cried a lot of nights as a freshman.
While trying to adjust to his new environment, Frazier struggled academically and was ruled ineligible after his sophomore year. The year away did nothing to hurt his game, and when he was allowed back on the team, Clyde was named an All-American and led the Salukis to the N.Y.C. played in Madison Square Garden.
I remember thinking once, I was like, man, what would it be like to play in New York, you know? And then you come into the N.Y.C.
In those days, the NIT was just as prestigious as the NCAAs, maybe more.
Every night for 2 weeks, 18,500 people at every game. So I was just flabbergasted.
Nobody even heard of Southern Illinois. They weren't a nationwide power, but they had a good team, and they had Walt Frazier was a name. We didn't know anything about him.
Southern Illinois stormed through the tournament, beating Marquette to claim the NIT championship. Frazier led the way, earning MVP honors.
He didn't really think of himself, again, as a pro player or potential to be a pro player until he had those great games in the Garden.
My lawyer had this dreadful look on his face. He goes, "You've been drafted by the Knicks." And I go, "Why?" Because I was like saying they had all these backcourt guys. They're like, why did they draft me? What are they going to do with me?
Already questioning his role on the team, Frazier's place suffered early in his rookie year.
Red Holtzman was very instrumental in my career. He said, hey Frazier, what's your problem on the court? And I told him, I just didn't have the confidence. I lost my confidence. So he said, well, I have confidence in you. I'm going to continue to give you playing time.
Told Walt, look, settle down, don't worry about it. All I want you to do is play defense. All I want you to do is play defense and pass the ball, hit the open man. Because of that, he took a lot of the pressure off Walt, and Walt started to flourish.
Before a game, he'd go over, put his arm around me, he said, "Clyde, you're my main man." And this would lift Clyde up.
And that little conversation that I had with him really energized me, gave me a lot of confidence. My game came together. Holtzman had told me to hit the open man, but every time I came over screen, I was open.
Down court, Frazier cuts to his left, stops and jumps. Yes!
One of the greatest nights I've ever seen him play.
Clyde Frazier's early NBA struggles quickly became a distant memory. In his second season, he was named to the NBA's All-Defensive team, and by his third, he was recognized as one of the best guards in the NBA.
The big team that I played on in 1970, we personified team.
I think we were one of the brightest teams ever to play. We each knew each other's skills. We knew that no one of us would be better than all five of us together.
All of these different players, guys from the South, guys from the North, and they come to New York City, and there's this uncanny cohesion.
They became one of the great teams of all time, and he was really the leader. Willis was the captain, but on the floor, Clyde ran the show.
It's Clyde basketball, and he let us play with it. And that's what he did. And he was good enough to make good decisions with the basketball. Dick Barnett was having a great night. He'd keep giving the ball to Dick until Dick runs it out, run the string out, then he go to someplace else.
I could have scored more. Willis Reed could have scored more, but we wouldn't have been as formidable. So we realized by sacrificing some of our talents to blend in with the team, we became awe-inspiring.
With Frazier directing the offense, the Knicks advanced to the NBA Finals to face the Los Angeles Lakers. The marquee matchup of the series was between the two centers, Willis Reed and Wilt Chamberlain. But in Game 5, the Knicks' chances for a championship were dealt a serious blow.
Game 5, Willis makes a move to the basket, falls to the floor, crashing to the floor.
And Willis is hurt as the Lakers come up with the ball. He's still in the backcourt. Willis very slow to get up as Nick Trent and Danny Whalen comes out to take a look.
They haul him off the floor. Our star is gone. What are we going to do now?
The big question is, will Willis Reed play tonight? There is tremendous doubt right now.
At that time, Red Holtzman just told us, hey, if Willis play or not, we have to. He told me, hey, Clyde, just hit the open man.
Here comes Willis, and the crowd is going wild. Willis passes the scorer's table.
That gave me so much confidence. I said to myself, man, we got these guys.
Ball down court to Frazier. Got it by West. Left side of the lane. Outside Reed. Jumps from 20. Yes!
Reed hit the first two baskets of the game. But with the Knicks center hobbled, Frazier listened to the advice of his coach.
Frazier.
Postman had told me to hit the open man, but every time I came over screen, I was open.
Down court, Frazier cuts to his left, stops and jumps.
Clyde just got bigger and bigger in the game, scoring and hitting shots and playing great defense.
Garrett loses to Frazier. He's ahead of the field. He's down the lane. Scoops and hits.
As much pressure he put on the ball, the number of steals he had, the number of points he scored, the number of assists he had. One of the greatest nights I've ever seen him play.
Frazier. Bowman.
The New York Knickerbockers have won the 1969-70 World Championship of Basketball. They are being mobbed as they head to the dressing room. The New York Knicks are the world champions in a devastating rout.
36 points, 19 assists, 7 rebounds, 4 steals. And the next day, everyone's talking about Willis Reed.
They talk about the Willis Reed game. It really should be the Clyde Frazier game.
He should have been MVP of the series, really. But he didn't get it. I think Reed got it.
I told him that was bull, man. Yeah, I mean, how many guys have a game 7 like that? So, you know, I was very disappointed. I thought I should have been MVP because Willis was injured most of the time.
Willis Reed was a psychological star, but Clyde Frazier was the star of that game.
But now, today, I know that if Willis didn't do what he did, I would not have had that game because he energized us for sure. I mean, his courage. I know I wouldn't have played under those circumstances.
Frazier led the Knicks to their first ever title in 1970. Just 3 years later, he led them to their second. With each title came more admiration. Kids everywhere wanted to be cool like Clyde, and Frazier took it upon himself to tell them how.
I did this book called Rock and Steady.
We started talking, and we had all these other things going on, and I said, this is an unusual. We have to make this book really what Clyde's all about.
My philosophy on love and sex and life and the sports and everything like that.
Rock and Steady wasn't just a book, it was a happening. It was an event. You learned to find out about how to make it with women, how to dress.
One chapter was about how to catch flies. So it's just a cool move, just going like that. So we had a chapter in there on that.
We also had Clyde's wardrobe stats. Alongside, the next page is his basketball stats, but the wardrobe stats came first. It was so much fun.
The kids loved it. They loved Clyde and what he personified. I was always cognizant of being a positive role model, not only myself, but that entire team. You know, we were always aware of the kids and the impact that we had on them and trying to be a positive role model for them.
The Knicks play with fire in his eye.
I'm always listening for new words.
Isolating and devastating, invincible, indefensible.
There were times when we first started working, I couldn't continue the play-by-play. I was laughing so hard.
My last season in New York, I was playing well. I had a good preseason. I think I averaged like 20 points, so I was really surprised when I was traded.
A few weeks into the 1977-78 season, the Knicks were looking to get younger and sent Frazier to Cleveland. The trade was sudden and emotional.
Clyde was devastated by the trade of the Knicks to Cleveland. Absolutely devastated.
The Clyde persona was one of this urban cat. The real persona of Walt Frazier was a guy who liked the energy of the people, fed off the energy of New York City, and when he went to Cleveland was not the same player.
I always equate my time in Cleveland like being shipped to Siberia. I was all dressed up and no place to go. I became a homebody.
A lot of people say that Walt Frazier is the greatest Knick of all time. Woody Allen says that, they haven't won championships since '73. He says that they were cursed because when they traded Walt Frazier, that was the curse, almost like the Red Sox trading Babe Ruth.
Soon after the trade, Clyde returned to the Garden in a Cavalier uniform, and the fans let him know how they felt.
The crowd here was standing and cheering, and it was a very exciting game, and there were tears in a lot of people's eyes.
And I had over 30 points. The game goes into overtime. We win. It was a Hollywood inning.
He played 10 brilliant seasons in the Knicks backcourt, leads the Knicks in points, assists, playoff scoring average, playoff assists, selected 7 times to the NBA's all-defensive team, one of the league's magnificent clutch performance, Walt Clyde Frazier.
It was a supreme honor to have my jersey retired. I think it's right up there with winning the championship, you know, being the MVP in the All-Star game, one of the 50 greatest players.
This is a very proud moment for me. My mother was a very motivating factor for me. She always taught me if I wanted something, I could do it if I just worked hard for it.
When he was going to retire, I remember him telling me that his mother had said, Walt, you've done your part. You don't have to do any more. You know, you can go now.
Well, I find now the biggest problem is what to do with so much free time. You know, like I'm not playing now. Some mornings I wake up and I say, did I miss practice?
He went out and fell in love with St. Croix and moved to St. Croix.
One of my favorite places to stay early on when I came to St. Croix.
He studied to become a captain of big boats and, you know, and became a sea captain.
I had this 38-foot trimaran, which has 3 pontoons. It's 25 feet wide. So I was going to charter my boat to tourists.
Frazier still owns his home in St. Croix, but the allure of the Big Apple proved too appealing to leave behind completely. He was unable to play for the Knicks, but found a new role with the team as a broadcaster.
The Knicks play with fire and desire. They've done so now. They're up by 1.
What I used to do, I used to get the Sunday Times, the arts and leisure section, and I always liked the way they critique plays. Riveting, mesmerizing, provocative, profound, dazzling. I'm always listening for new words.
Isolating and devastating, invincible, indefensible.
There were times when we first started working, I couldn't continue the play-by-play. I was laughing so hard.
He didn't want to just be the run-of-the-mill stock broadcaster. He wanted to bring something new to the game.
Very erratic or dramatic.
Last season against the Clippers, and Chris Kaman scored a basket at the Clippers Center, and Clyde said,
Let's take a look at Kaman, the 7-footer, 265 pounds of fiasco right now.
fiasco. He plucked the word out of nowhere.
Slamming and jamming was Curry.
Kids love to use his phrases, you know, swishing and dishing and whatever, all his rhymes.
The TV, man, is a powerful, powerful thing. My celebrity today is uncanny. You know, like still kids tell me, oh, you're the greatest Knick ever. I watch you play all the time.
There's this feeling that almost like they're in the company of royalty. In my lifetime, there's been 3 major stars in New York sports history: Joe Namath, Mickey Mantle, and Walt Frazier.
For a guy that was born and raised in Atlanta, he's a New Yorker. And you know that sometimes you go to a place, you visit a place, you just feel at home. He felt at home right from the start.
Clyde Frazier's legacy in the city is a man of the city and a man who has the charm of New York City in its best moments.
I think for Walt Clyde Frazier, 2 words: champion and style. It was all about doing whatever was needed to do to win a championship, and he won 2 of those, and every step of the way he did it with style.
Earl Monroe's game is the street game. It's the concrete game. It's the game that nobody before him ever really had.
Earl Monroe was one of the few players that was a magician on the court.
Earl was the quintessential one-on-one player, meaning, you know, he could go one-on-one against anybody. He was a virtuoso.
He was an electrifying player. He was one of the first real Showtime guys in the NBA.
What you see in today's NBA is really largely a tribute to Earl Monroe.
First nickname I probably had was Duke of Earl, and then we got into the Thomas Edison type of thing, and I was the doctor at one point. I was Black Jesus at another point. You know, I was Magic at another point. So, you know, all these nicknames just kept coming about, and I just kept trying to live up to them.
Earl Monroe, among the game's greatest one-on-one threats, brought a poetic grace to the NBA that few had ever seen.
Earl had this ballet movement, this beautiful aesthetic quality of just how he moved around. It was just marvelous to be able to watch.
I learned through trial and error. I never had anyone to say, Earl, do this or do that.
When you watched him make a move and go to the basket, you really thought he had no idea when he started this move. He didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know where it was going to end up. He just knew something good was going to happen, and most of the times it did.
When Earl is coming down the floor, he doesn't know ahead of time that he's going to do this. He doesn't know that until you react. Once you react to him, now he makes a move. It's all instinctive and spontaneous.
I remember after one game saying to him, you know, it's so much fun to watch you play because you never know what you're going to do. And he said, it's fun for me, too, because I never know what I'm going to do next either.
People walk away oohing and ahhing. Wow, you see this? Did you see that? I mean, the great players. You talk to Jerry West. You talk to Oscar Robertson. You talk to Clyde Frazier. Any of those guys, all they just say, hey, we don't want to see him tonight. We don't want to see him tonight.
He had this kind of globetrotter playground game. When he got the ball, and the whole arena was standing up.
The ironic part of it is he came off as such a star, a flamboyant basketball player that, of course, when you talk to him, you have to ask him to speak louder because you can't hear him, you know, because he's a very sweet, soft-spoken person.
Once I got on the floor, I was a different person. I was, you know, I knew I was a show, and I knew how to make people react to what I did.
Monroe was drafted second by the Baltimore Bullets in 1967, a team that had won just 20 games the previous season.
Well, they were talking about moving and their franchise to Houston or somewhere. And that first year that I came out and the band started coming out again, then there was talk about keeping the franchise in the Baltimore area.
They wanted this guy to take 30 shots a game. You know, they wanted him to go one-on-one at every opportunity, and he would embarrass you.
Despite Monroe's offensive brilliance, some purists were uncomfortable with his game.
I won Rookie of the Year that year, and people were still skeptical and saying, well, you know, this is not the way you play basketball.
The NBA at the time, you know, when Earl was coming into it, it was kind of a staid league. When Earl was spinning, going behind the back and, you know, doing these nice finger rolls, he was one of the first players that people saw do those types of moves.
You know, as you go through the process of creating a unique game, you had to run across a lot of naysayers.
Was the beginning of what we see today, you know, how the guys are playing today, you know, aggressive one-on-one playing and such, and, you know, putting people in the stands.
The Earl Monroe that we saw with the Baltimore Bullets was the ultimate showman. He was the ultimate individual entertainer, and he was the leader of his team. He was the franchise.
They loved him in Baltimore. He's a god in Baltimore, no question about it. Still is.
By 1969, with a talented group around him, including Wes Unseld and Gus Johnson, Monroe and the Bullets became a run-and-gun force.
It wasn't Earl Monroe and a cast of nobodies. Earl was a great player on a team, and the team made room for his individual virtuosity with a wider range of possibilities.
1969, the Bullets actually had the best record in the whole Eastern Division. Knicks came along, not only beat him in the playoffs, but beat him in 4 straight.
It was real tough, especially because we wanted to play New York, but we get knocked out, and you know, it's not a good feeling at all. And it really just kind of geared us up to try and, you know, get back at it for next year. I went to him after the season and I said, Coach, I'm going back to Philly. You know, I've done all this here, you know, I should be playing more. And he said, what did you come down here for? I said, well, you know, I came down here to play ball. He said, well, you should go back to Philly.
There's always that Philadelphia swagger, that your basketball is equal to anybody else's, and in most cases better.
We were in South Philadelphia. We did live in a tough neighborhood. My cousins, they were all involved in the gangs and whatnot.
Gang warfare in the old days was territorial. So if you went from South Philadelphia to North Philadelphia, guys would stop you and say, you know, where you going?
Once I started playing sports, you know, guys would just look at us and say, oh, those guys, they play basketball or such, and let them go. And that was good for me because, you know, I wasn't a great fighter. I didn't believe in all that.
We started playing basketball over at 30th and Oakford Street Playgrounds. Earl was the kind of guy that, at that stage in his game, was looked over. And that didn't deter Earl from working on his basketball game.
Nobody looked at the South Philadelphia ball players as being good ball players. The good ball players all came from West Philadelphia.
And this is the city of Wilt Chamberlain. Come on, man. And now we're hearing to us, this young guy coming through, talking about, there's a guy named, his name is Earl Monroe. So what? He's got some kind of special moves. It was like the ripple through the neighborhood.
Earl scored something like 43 points. The coach comes over to me, he said, Smitty, what did Earl have for lunch today? I said, I don't know, Coach. I think he had a cheesesteak. He said, okay. You buy him one for Thursday's game.
Earl came out of Bartram High School, didn't know in what direction he wanted to go, and had to find himself. So he got a job. He was working in a factory. And then he got this opportunity to go to Winston-Salem with Coach Big House Gaines.
His whole thing was he didn't start freshman. So I went to him after the season and I said, Coach, I'm going back to Philly. You know, I've done all this here, you know, I should be playing more. And he said, what did you come down here for? I said, well, you know, I came down here to play ball. He said, well, you should go back to Philly because that could brought you down here to, you know, not only play ball, but to get an education. And then he said, wait right here. And he went into another room and he came back and said, your mother's on the phone. So that was it, you know, being a mama's boy, that was it for me.
He met his match in Coach Big House Gaines, and he ended up being able to ride out the storm and made him the better person for that.
In my sophomore year, I averaged about 23. My junior year, I averaged 30 points and then 41 points. So, you know, I always felt as though I was, you know, progressing.
Earl Monroe of Winston-Salem State College set an all-time national collegiate scoring record, 41.5 game average.
He had one of the most incredible basketball seasons in college basketball that any college basketball player ever had. Led Winston-Salem to the Division II championship.
After dominating Division II basketball, Monroe earned Rookie of the Year in 1968, then led the Bullets to the best record in the East in 1969. For the NBA, the end of the decade marked the beginning of a ferocious rivalry.
When the Knicks were winning their first championship, their main competitor, at least in the East, was the Bullets, and it was they were battle royals.
People forget today how heated that rivalry was.
We were complete opposites. They were all offense, and we were a defensive team. So it was a perfect blend. And then the proximity of the cities, you know, being so close.
It was New York. Everyone hated New York because New York had all the, you know, the planes, you know, the first-class treatment and things of that nature.
They were their number one most heated rivalry, and the number one rivalry within the game was Walt Frazier against Earl Monroe.
Earl and I coming in the same year, we were same rookies, and we had the same goal to be the best
guard in the NBA.
I was more or less the offensive guy, and even though Clyde played good offense and whatnot, he was in turn as the defensive guy. So it was a great matchup.
With Frazier and Monroe each controlling his team's destiny, the Bullets and Knicks regularly locked horns in the postseason.
We lost 4 in a row the first time. Then the next year we had another fierce battle, 7-game series that the Knicks won, and that's when they went on to win the whole thing. The next year was really a year that we felt was our year. And we came into Madison Square Garden with the intent to win that series. That series, another hard-fought battle, went 7 games.
Baltimore had finally beaten the Knicks in Madison Square Garden, and it was a big one for the Bullets. Their first conference championship in 23 years.
When you say to the Baltimore Bullet guys, if you won the championship and you hadn't beaten the Knicks, or you lost the NBA championship, but you beat the Knicks, you know what they say? Man, we glad we beat the Knicks. It was that kind of a rivalry.
For us, winning in the Garden, winning the 7th game in the Garden, and winning the Eastern Division, that was our, championship. That was our, NBA championship. My agent at the time called me and said, Earl, I got something on the table here in New York, and what do you think? I said, New York? And I said, no. I said, those guys, no. We're mortal enemies,
It just came completely out of the blue. No advance notice, no rumors, no nothing. All of a sudden, New York woke up one morning and Earl Monroe was a Knick.
As a fan, Earl Monroe, we didn't like Earl Monroe. He used to kill us, for crying out loud. He's on the Bullets.
Just 7 months after leading the Bullets past the Knicks and into the NBA Finals, Earl Monroe crossed enemy lines. Many questioned the move.
The Knicks, of course, had made their reputation and had won a championship by being the epitome of quote-unquote team basketball. 5 working as one, 12 guys working as one. Now you bring in the greatest one-on-one player of his era. What's going to happen here?
Where are they going to get enough basketballs to satisfy both Monroe and Frazier? I mean, they both needed to have the ball. They both needed to score. They were leaders on their teams.
I was surprised at the avalanche of criticism that we could never play together. We need 2 basketballs. I was flabbergasted by that, what the press was saying. Trade Frazier, get rid of Frazier. So people weren't even giving it a chance to work.
I went back to Philadelphia, talked to my mom, and went over and saw my main man, Sonny Hill. We came to the conclusion that certainly I wouldn't, achieve all the things that I thought I would achieve on an individual basis. But as far as the team basis is concerned, it might be a good fit.
He said, Sonny, I'm a basketball player. And I knew right then that he would be able to make the transition. He gave up the degree of his game to fit in.
I played the same game. I never changed. So Earl was the guy who became a team player because he had accomplished everything individually. So now he wanted to get a championship.
Trying to find your way to fit into that team, the model of that team, was a little difficult at first because you can't do the things that you used to do. Times that I would take over games, I would have to restrain myself because I knew it wasn't the thing to do.
Earl came as, kind of the ultimate one-on-one player and fit right into the team, had his role to play and played it beautifully and unselfishly.
That he could come in and still be effective even though he wasn't getting the same number of shots, even though he wasn't handling the ball as much, even though he wasn't the #1 guy. So that speaks a lot to his, not only his character, but his ability as just a solid, fundamentally sound basketball player.
Ego. I sacrificed a lot of ego, and at first year I must have averaged maybe 11. And, that's certainly why I had to average 11 points since I was in junior high school. But, if you're a basketball player, you can play. And that's what I was. I was a basketball player. I could play with any situation and kind of proved it here.
Monroe was winning New York fans over with the same style and grace that made him a legend in Philadelphia.
He was always touchable. He was always willing to come back. He was always willing to be a part of where he came from. So the people always felt that he was a part of them. And in turn, they revered him for that.
Got guys like Connie Hawkins and so many NBA guys playing in the Rucker League here. Well, there was also the Baker League down in Philadelphia, and Earl would go down there in the summer. And he wasn't the Pearl, he was Black Jesus.
As the Rolls Royce, which he was driving at that point, would pull up at Temple University's McGonigal Hall in the middle of Broad Street in North Philadelphia, there would be a buzz. And then the buzz would be a roar. And now all of a sudden, he's here. And the crowd would just break out.
As much of a showman as he was in the NBA, he really turned it on in the summer leagues. And that also really solidified his reputation.
By the 1972-73 season, Monroe had adapted his game to perfectly complement Clyde Frazier's.
This team is so efficient, and if you had one little breakdown, they would take advantage of it. And it was spearheaded by Clyde and Earl.
The Rolls-Royce backcourt had the Knicks gunning for the team's second title in 4 years.
The previous year, when they had gotten Earl in mid-season, Earl helped to lead that team to a very unlikely Eastern Conference championship and a date in the finals with the Lakers, who had a terrific team that year. They had blitzed the NBA. One of the key points of the Lakers winning in 72 was the job that Gail Goodrich did in the finals, being guarded by Earl Monroe. Lo and behold, 1973, the Knicks get to the finals again against the Lakers, and again it's Earl Monroe against Gail Goodrich. This time it's reversed. Earl was the one that had the marvelous series.
Bradley, triple team, sends ahead for Reed. Cross-court Monroe on the drive against West. Whirls and hits. The New York Knicks have defeated the Los Angeles Lakers, and they race off the court here at the Forum in Los Angeles with the 1973 World Championship.
When my mother passed away, I spent about a week away from the game, and I dedicated the rest of that year to her, which was another good feeling about winning the championship in 1973. One of the things that I'm most disappointed with is the fact that the people here in New York never got a chance to see me as I was, night in and night out. But they got a good watered-down version.
When the Knicks begin to fall to the bottom, Coach Red Holzman said, Earl, is there any more pearling in that bag? Can you do it? We're not winning too many games here, but we need to entertain the fans. I said, let me look down the bag. Oh, yeah, I got some stuff left.
When I was in Baltimore, you saw my numbers start to go down because we had better teams. Well, in New York, conversely, if they happened the other way, was that we didn't have good teams, so my numbers started to go up a little bit.
One by one, DeBusschere retired, and Willis retired, and Lucas retired, and Bradley retired. Frazier was traded. And then all of a sudden, you look at that team picture, and Earl Monroe is the last guy left, the last link to that championship era. And I think that endeared him so much to the people of New York.
Years later, I think one of the things that I'm most disappointed with is the fact that the people here in New York never got a chance to see me as I was, night in and night out. But they got a good watered-down version.
Number 15 will be unfurled, never again to be worn by a New York Knickerbocker.
A lot of times, when you're younger, you never realize what things really mean to you. And the older you get, the more you realize that there were memories that you cherished that you'll never be able to recapture. This is a type of instance that a person can reflect back on it later on in his life and say that, yes, this was the time, this was the greatest moment of my life.
The place was packed that night. And for the fans to react the way that they reacted, it was just very, very special. And I know he really appreciated that night.
Since retiring from the game in 1980, Monroe has kept his hand in the entertainment industry.
Well, I was always in the music business and started my own record label and things of that nature. And I love being in the studio. I love that whole aura of the music industry.
The label is Pretty Pearl. It's a nice name, isn't it? Pretty Pearl label. So he's doing what he enjoys doing now.
Earl Monroe is one of the best people I've ever met in my life, and I have nothing to do with basketball. Just one of the most gracious, friendly, warmest people you'll ever come across.
He surprised me in that he was different from his persona on the court. Like I said, off the court, Earl Monroe is not a flamboyant. He's just a regular, down-to-earth guy, one of the nicest guys I've ever met.
You start talking about basketball, and you don't really know him, you'll never hear anything about it. You would never know he was the Earl the Pearl Monroe.
Despite a modest nature, Monroe's basketball achievements were recognized when he was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 1990, and later when he was named to the NBA's 50 Greatest Team in 1996.
Earl Monroe became an all-star, an NBA legend, and an NBA superstar as a Bullet. He became a champion as a New York Knick.
He could have stayed in Baltimore, certainly would have put up greater numbers. The question is, would he have won? You know, and that's the thing. He's viewed as a great individual player and a winner.
My legacy is that, for me, is that the game that they're playing today is the game that I brought here. And when I see guys and the different things that I see guys do, I know that before I got here, they weren't doing those things. And if you think of a legacy of anything, is you look out there at the game today and you say, that's Earl.